What terrifies you the most? Is it the prospect of failing in front of everyone, or the quiet, gnawing dread that you are wasting your life? We live in an age of unprecedented physical safety, yet our minds are paralyzed by constant, invisible threats. We are drowning in anxiety, obsessed with outcomes we cannot control. But what if your fear isn't a warning to retreat, but a signal to awaken? For millennia, humanity has sought a cure for fear. We look for it in money, in status, in distractions, and in the relentless pursuit of comfort. Yet, the more we try to insulate ourselves from risk, the more fragile we become. The ancient philosophers understood this paradox intimately. From the Stoic sages of Rome to the battlefields of ancient Indian epics, they recognized that a fearless life is not a life without danger, but a life where inner strength dictates our response to it. As we often explore in New Acropolis, the real battle is internal. To conquer fear, we must first understand its roots and learn to navigate the labyrinth of our own minds. Let's examine how timeless wisdom can dismantle our modern anxieties and forge an unbreakable spirit. The modern world has convinced us that crises are inherently negative, a disruption to the comfortable stasis we feel entitled to. We label every moment of friction as a catastrophe, frantically seeking an escape hatch. But Buddhism teaches us that the very foundation of existence involves impermanence and pain. When we deduce that our happiness relies entirely on conserving a world that is constantly changing, we set ourselves up for a life ruled by fear. We fear losing our jobs, our partners, our youth, our social standing. This attachment to the fleeting is the true origin of our daily suffering. Yet, the most profound fear we face is not of external loss, but of internal confrontation. We are afraid to look inward. In the great Hindu epic, the Bhagavad Gita, the warrior Arjuna stands on a battlefield completely paralyzed by fear. He is not afraid of the physical combat, but of the psychological war. Arjuna realizes that to win, he must fight his own relatives, which symbolize his own deeply ingrained flaws, vices, and comfortable illusions. He experiences a terrifying moment of cowardice because he knows that destroying these familiar parts of his ego will leave him feeling empty. We all face an Arjuna moment. It is that pivotal instance where we must choose between the easy inertia of our old, toxic habits or the terrifying unknown of inner growth. We hesitate because the fear of the new is overwhelming. It feels safer to remain in the dimly lit cave of our familiar misery than to step into the blinding light of self-awareness. We are terrified that if we abandon our superficial desires, nothing will be left to give our lives meaning. We misinterpret this fear as a sign to stop. But interpreting this battle is not just about reading an ancient text. It is about interpreting life itself. Our fear is simply the ego throwing a tantrum because it knows its absolute reign is coming to an end. It is the necessary friction before the spark. Without facing this internal crisis, without stepping into the battlefield of our own consciousness, we can never develop our hidden internal potencies or forge true strength. True strength is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. Once we embrace this truth, the illusion of safety finally shatters completely. To conquer fear, we need an anchor, and the most powerful element we possess in this inner war is the mind. The wisdom traditions of Tibet teach us that without concentration, or Dharana, we cannot even aspire to conquer wisdom. An anarchic, dispersed, and superficial mind is a breeding ground for anxiety. We are constantly pulled by the gravity of our senses, reacting to every notification and perceived slight. To hear what the Tibetans call the voice of the silence, we must distance ourselves from our senses and govern our minds. This means choosing what we think about, rather than letting our thoughts be dictated by the chaotic external world. When concentrated, fear loses its grip, because fear thrives in distracted consciousness. When the mind is steady, we can begin to objectively assess our reality. The Stoics of ancient Rome provided the ultimate practical tool for this. The philosopher Epictetus famously warned us never to demand that things happen exactly as we wish, but rather to wish for things to happen as they actually do. By aligning our human will with the necessity of the cosmos, we find genuine freedom. Fear is almost always a resistance to reality. We are terrified of the future because we are desperately trying to control outcomes that belong entirely to the universe. When we understand that the cosmos is a living, rhythmic entity, we realize that resisting it is the very source of our psychological suffering. This does not mean we should become passive. The Stoic concept of Ataraxia is frequently misunderstood as cold indifference. In truth, it is the profound peace that arises from virtue and inner harmony. A fearless life is a highly active one. It requires the courage to replace the chaotic passions that make the soul suffer with intelligent, active contemplation. This aligns perfectly with the timeless approach of New Acropolis, philosophy as a living practice, not just an intellectual exercise. It is about applying this harmonious rhythm to our daily lives, ensuring that our actions are dictated by reason rather than panic, and our choices are rooted in courage rather than convenience. How do we practice this active courage? The Bhagavad Gita offers a profound strategic lever: right action without attachment to the fruit. Krishna explains to Arjuna that human beings are perpetually trapped in a cycle of cause and effect because they work solely for the reward. We take a job for the status. We build a relationship for the security. As long as our actions are tethered to these external rewards, we are prisoners, constantly afraid that our prize will be taken away. To be truly free from fear, we must act according to the imperative of the law, doing what is right simply because it is right, without craving the reward. Working without attachment is the ultimate shield against anxiety. If your goal is simply to execute your duty with excellence, the universe cannot threaten you. You cannot fail if your only objective is to act with integrity. By shifting your focus from the uncontrollable outcome to the controllable effort, you sever the root of fear. The anxiety of failure evaporates because failure is redefined. A loss is no longer a catastrophe. It is merely a lesson on the path of experience. When right action merges with the pursuit of knowledge, it transcends mere activity and becomes wisdom in action. The person who masters this is no longer tossed around by the turbulent waves. They stand firm, immune to dread, embodying the profound freedom that comes from absolute self-mastery. This level of self-mastery is not achieved overnight. It is the result of continuous, deliberate practice in the face of everyday anxieties. Every time you choose to focus on your effort instead of your fear, you build an invincible fortress within your own mind. You transform yourself from a passive victim of circumstance into an active architect of your own destiny. The philosophy of the fearless life insists that your mind must belong completely to you. When you conquer this domain, nothing external can ever truly harm you or break your unbreakable spirit. The journey towards a fearless life inevitably leads us to a central, terrifying confrontation. Ancient mythology perfectly encodes this psychological climax in the story of Theseus and the Minotaur. The labyrinth represents life itself, with all its confusing trials, dead ends, and anxieties. At the center of this maze waits the Minotaur, a terrifying creature that symbolizes our blind, shapeless, and unguided material nature. It is the embodiment of our deepest, most irrational fears. We spend our lives running through the outer corridors of the labyrinth, desperately avoiding the center. But true liberation requires us to become Theseus. Theseus represents the higher self, the human hero who actively guides his own consciousness rather than running blindly. He enters the labyrinth not to escape, but to hunt the beast. He uses the double-edged sword of willpower to carve a path, and the thread of Ariadne, our soul and memory of experience, to ensure he does not lose himself in the darkness. Slaying the Minotaur is the ultimate act of fearlessness. It means looking directly at the things that terrify you, your insecurities, your past traumas, your impending mortality, and refusing to blink. But once the beast is slain, a new challenge emerges, stepping out of the darkness and into the light. The Greek philosopher Plato captured this profound psychological shift in his famous allegory of the cave. He asks us to imagine prisoners chained in a subterranean cave, forced to watch shadows on a wall, and believing these illusions are the ultimate reality. If a prisoner were to suddenly break his chains and turn around, he would be completely disoriented. The light of the fire would blind him, and the terrifying realization that his entire life was based on echoes and shadows would make him want to flee back to the familiar darkness. This is the climax of our inner evolution. When you finally stop letting fear dictate your life, the new reality can be overwhelmingly bright. You realize that the opinions of others, the pursuit of endless wealth, and the obsession with social status were nothing but shadows on a cave wall. Breaking free from these chains requires immense resilience. It demands what the Chinese sage Confucius described as the path of the Jew. The ideal human, the Jew, is not a genetic Superman, but a person of high moral principles who remains perfectly flexible and serene even in times of chaos. When the world around him is engulfed in political or social madness, his soul remains entirely his own. He does not change the course of his righteous conduct, even if his life is threatened or he is ridiculed by the masses. He stands firm because he is governed by a higher internal order, an inner harmony that nothing external can disturb. This is the fearless life actualized. It is not about living recklessly. It is about living with profound, unshakable intention. You become a force of nature, driven by the pure fire of your own spirit, rather than the chaotic winds of external validation. The individual who has slain their inner Minotaur and stepped out of the cave no longer fears the judgments of the chained prisoners they left behind. Even when they return to the cave out of love and compassion for their fellow humans, they are not afraid of the shadows. They have seen the sun. They know the truth. They understand that the only real danger in this world is to live a life entirely dictated by illusions. By facing the terror of the labyrinth and enduring the blinding light of the real world, you forge a character of pure steel. You do not just survive the modern world, you elevate it. You become a lighthouse in the storm, proving to everyone around you that it is entirely possible to walk through the fire of existence without being consumed by the flames. This ultimate liberation is the secret reward for those who refuse to surrender to the paralyzing grip of dread. They discover that the monsters in the shadows lose their terrifying power the very second we decide to stand our ground, hold the torch, and fight. To summarize this profound philosophical roadmap, we must look to the ancient Egyptians and their concept of Ma'at. Ma'at represents truth, universal order, and justice. For the Egyptians, the supreme good was the establishment of Ma'at within the society and within the individual. When your internal world is ordered, when your mind operates on the principles of justice and truth, fear has no psychological real estate to occupy. Fear is a symptom of chaos. Courage is the byproduct of order. Aristotle echoed this sentiment centuries later, when he identified happiness as the ultimate goal of human existence. However, he clarified that true happiness does not come from external pleasures or avoiding pain, but from the activity of the soul directed by virtue. Virtue is born from temperance and the avoidance of extremes. When we act with temperance, we are no longer slaves to our anxieties or our desires. We achieve a state of autarky, or self-sufficiency, which produces profound inner happiness and fearlessness. The secret to a fearless life is not a hack or a psychological trick. It is the daily, rigorous application of classical wisdom. It is learning to concentrate your mind like a Tibetan monk, accepting the cosmos like a Roman Stoic, working without attachment like a Hindu warrior, and ordering your soul like an Egyptian sage. At New Acropolis, we believe that this philosophical education is the greatest survival tool humanity has ever invented. It teaches us that while we cannot control the chaos of the external world, we have absolute sovereignty over our internal kingdom. Fear will always knock on your door. It is a natural human reflex, but philosophy gives you the power to decide whether or not you let it inside. You can choose to remain paralyzed in the illusion of safety, or you can draw your sword, face the Minotaur, and finally step into the light. The choice is yours, and it always has been. This is the very essence of human freedom. You are not a helpless vessel tossed by the storms of fate, but a conscious navigator capable of charting a course through any tempest. Your mind, when properly trained, is an impenetrable fortress. Every time you consciously reject the easy comfort of cowardice and embrace the demanding path of virtue, you are actively writing a legacy of resilience. You are proving that the human spirit is infinitely stronger than the anxieties attempting to suffocate it. Embrace the daily challenge before you. Transform your profound fear into the ultimate catalyst for your own magnificent awakening. If you are ready to stop living in fear and start practicing this philosophy in real life, join us at New Acropolis. We have dozens of physical schools spread across the United States dedicated to cultivating this exact timeless wisdom. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and check the links in the description below to find a local branch near you. Awaken your truly fearless inner hero today.